Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Nuska. I am the program manager for the Masters in Educational Transformation at Georgetown. Um, Today, we'll be covering who we are in this program, an overview of our program, an overview of our admissions process, and then any questions that you might have that we can answer for you. So part of our team are Professor Kristen Sinclair and Professor Mingju Deng, who are also on this call and will be helping me today. If you would like to guys unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Sinclair, and I'm a professor in the program, and I primarily teach in the advocacy and policy concentration.
Hello everyone, my name is Mingzhu Deng. I'm a cross-concentration faculty, which means I teach in both AMP and learning and teaching.
And then I already introduced myself. I'm Jan Muska. I'm the program manager. So I'll be helping you all with any logistical operational questions you have about applying to the program. So who are we in this program? This program actually launched in 2017 as part of Georgetown's Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And we are actually the first program at Georgetown to offer a U.S. teaching licensure, which is very exciting. We're designed for students, as in you all, who are interested in ensuring that all children in U.S. K through 12 schools have the opportunities and resources needed to thrive. We're committed to ensuring that our students, you all, have the knowledge, the skills, the foresight, the competence, and understanding to transform U.S. education, whether it's in the classroom as a teacher or through policy and advocacy work. And we employ a residency-based model that integrates experiential learning with our rigorous coursework, and we'll talk about that residency experience a little bit later in our presentation. As a program, we have four main core commitments. Our first commitment is to an integrative and interdisciplinary approach to the study of education that stresses systemic thinking. We have a commitment to asset-based, culturally and linguistically relevant and sustaining approaches to children's learning. And that approach really reflects Georgetown's focus on educating the whole child. We're committed to anti-racist education as a central component to social justice in education. And we're committed to an emphasis on graduate learning anchored through experiential learning, as we mentioned, and research, as well as the utilization of knowledge and action through our residency programs. So you're not just learning educational theory with us, you're also learning how to put that really into practice. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the structure of the program. So we are a 30-credit master's program that is designed to be completed in 1 year. So we start in July and finish in June. We do this year, for the first time, have a part-time option for our program. If that is something you are interested in, please feel free to get in touch with me. But typically, our program is designed for 1 year full-time coursework. We have two concentrations that you apply to one or the other. One is our advocacy and policy concentration, which is designed to prepare advocacy and policy practitioners who are skilled in recognizing and navigating obstacles, opportunities, et cetera, to transforming both the policies and the structures of U.S. education. And then our learning and teaching concentration, which you might also see referred to as our teacher residency program, specializing in offering licensure in ESL, which is designed to promote effective instructional practices for multilingual children with diverse needs in an urban context, namely DC. So as I mentioned, we're a 30-credit-hour program. That's 10 courses over the course of 12 months. During the day, you'll be at your residency placement. We'll talk about the residency placement in a moment. And then you'll attend your full-time coursework at night. Our total tuition is about $61,000. Don't let that freak you out. We have lots of scholarships available, but we wanted to give you that information up front. Some of our unique program offerings, and these are things that I really love about working with this program, is that You're really learning by experience, not just learning theory, but really learning how to get your hands dirty in the field of education through working at your residency placement during the academic year. We have a fantastic professional development speaker series that allows our students to engage with public educators, educational researchers, educational advocates in the DC community or elsewhere to really expand your scope of what education work looks like beyond the classroom. And because we're a smaller cohort-based program, you really develop close relationships with both your cohort mates as well as your professors. So our professors are really with you every step of the way in the program. You know lots about each other, you know lots about your cohort mates. You're really working together as a community throughout the program. All right, I'm now going to hand it over to Professor Sinclair to talk about our advocacy and policy concentration curriculum, and then to Professor Deng to talk about our learning and teaching curriculum.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on a Friday night or early evening. So in terms of the full-time advocacy and policy curriculum, you'll notice here 2 classes on both that are in bold. So those are classes that both concentrations take together: culturally relevant education and social justice in the summer one, and then advocating for learners and learning in summer 2. So both advocacy and policy and learning and teaching take those classes. For advocacy and policy students, you also take critical empirics in summer 1, which is a class that really engages you sort of in critically reflecting on data, what counts as data, what counts as research, questions of that nature. In the fall, you'll take policy analysis in education and data analysis in education. And data analysis in education gives you some very introduction to statistics in education research. In both the fall and the spring, you'll take a year-long course called Policy Residency, and that course supports your work in your residency placement, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And in the spring, you take a class called Organizational Change in Education, as well as Intergovernmental Relations and Accountability in Education. And then finally, in summer 2, you take that cross-concentration course again, Advocating for Learners and Learning, which really kind of brings everything together and thinks about what advocating looks like across policy and classroom spaces. And then there's also another class that's a little bit more hands-on project-based called Learning Design and Assessment Policy. And I'll hand it over to Dr. Deng to do the L&T curriculum.
Hi, everyone. All right, I'll talk about A&T curriculum. Just to reiterate what Dr. Sinclair have already shared, that for summer 1 and summer 2, there are 2 cross-concentration courses that you will take with the MP folks. So they are the culturally relevant education and social justice, and then the other one is advocating for learners and learning. In the first summer, we have a course called Critical Educational Linguistics in PK-12 settings. This is a course where we will engage with a whole range of theories about language and second language acquisition. And then a continuation of that course would be, if you look in the fall, we have second language acquisition, instruction, and assessment. So based on the theory you learn in the summer course, in this course, we focus on the methods of teaching that originated from all sorts of theories about language and language learning. And another course in the fall is creating productive classroom communities. So traditionally, this course may be called the classroom management course, but we try to like reframe it in terms of it's not just about the steps, the tactics of managing your students' behavior, but it's really more about creating a productive classroom community where we talk about the principles, of course, also the strategies to engage all your students, and especially paying attention to students who are traditionally marginalized in a schooling space. And then we have Teacher Residency 1 and Teacher Residency 2. In these 2 courses, we focus on, giving you space to sort of debrief what is happening at your school when you're teaching, either your TA or you're the lead teacher in the classroom. And then we also talk a lot more about general pedagogy. So in the second language acquisition course, we focus more on ESL related pedagogy, but in the teacher residency, we focus more on general teaching pedagogy. And then moving to spring, again, we have emerging bilinguals, school culture, policy, and learning. And in this course, we will more closely examine, the socio-political and socio-cultural context of teaching EL students, and also to get started in thinking about what it means to advocate for our students in school and policy spaces. And again, we have teacher residency 2, a continuation of residency 1. And the last course I want to talk, and the last course in the spring is language and literacy development in content areas, which really to focus on addressing the need for our ESL students to both learn language, the English language, but also to develop their literacy skills in the content areas, in math, in understanding math texts, social science texts, etc., etc. And then in the last semester, in summer 2, we have child and adolescent development, which will be a course where we focus a lot more on theories about children development, educational psychology, etc. Thank you.
Great, thank you both. As I mentioned earlier, starting with this application cycle, we actually have a part-time curriculum available now. So in the part-time version of our program, you're doing 12 credits of coursework or 4 courses in your first year. And then in your second year, you'll be doing the rest of your coursework, 18 credits or 6 courses. And you'll be doing your residency experience in that second year as well. We keep alluding to our residency experience. This is a big cornerstone of our program. So once again, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Sinclair to talk about the Advocacy and Policy Concentrations residency experience, and then Professor Deng to talk about the Learning and Teaching Concentrations experience.
So one of my roles too is I also help coordinate the residency program for advocacy and policy students. And so in the spring with incoming students, I go through sort of a facilitated matching process where I help figure out what you all are really want to get out of your residency experience, and then help connect you with some organizations that we have long-term partnerships with. And the residency is about 20 hours a week in the fall and the spring. We aim to have everyone in paid positions, and over the course of the last several years, about like 95% of folks are in paid positions. And so the organizations can range from government groups. For example, we often have folks at the DC State Board of Education or Alexandria Public Schools Office of Equity, or local community advocacy groups, or local nonprofits. And we sometimes do have folks work, since we are DC after all, in national nonprofits focusing on education as well. So it's a really wide range of programs and organizations that folks end up working for. And part of the residency class that I mentioned is we'll often sort of share and talk about what folks are doing in those programs. So it's a really wonderful way. Not only are you learning by doing in your own placement, but you're also sort of like learning by osmosis about what a lot of what your peers are doing in their residency placements as well. So it gives you kind of a very robust sense of what education policy and advocacy looks like across the city and sort of nationally as well as building those professional networks with folks in your cohort. Dr. Deng?
Thank you. I'll talk about the residency for learning and teaching a little bit. So basically, our students, they work full-time, either as teacher aide or full-time teacher, like the lead teacher in the classroom. They are placed in public schools, DCPS, or public charter schools in the DC area. So some of our students, they stay in they are already teachers in DC or DC Charter or DCPS, so they stay in their position. Some of our students, maybe they come in from a different state, they will be like looking. We will have also facilitate your application and interviewing of jobs with schools here. The requirement of those positions is that you have to be working with multilingual students. especially students identified as English learners. So when you leave the program, you the same as the advocacy and policy students are going to get an MA degree, but also you will be eligible to be licensed in DC as an ESL teacher. And throughout the year, of course, we in our program, Dr. Resinero and I also have started to taking up some of the responsibilities to coordinate the school, your residency school, and our program and course relationships. You're always going to have a mentor who will be working with you throughout the year. And there's a school coordinator that we constantly talk to or problem solve when issues arise. So to make sure that you have this network that you could fall back on during the whole year. Thank you.
So a question I get a lot is, what do people do with a master's in educational transformation? So many amazing different things. So these are all career paths that actually I took directly from our alumni. So we have students working as English language learner specialists in schools. We have a student who was working as a policy analyst for K-12 education at the Center for American Progress here in DC. We have someone working for DCPS as specialist for interdisciplinary curriculum design, someone working here in DC as the assistant ombudsman for special education. But we also have students who go on to get their PhDs and want to study education more in that realm. We have a student who actually did law school after doing her master's so that she could focus on education law. So there's a whole broad range of things that students do, both with the learning and teaching degree, including, of course, going into the classroom, becoming a licensed teacher, or with the advocacy and policy degree. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the admissions process for this program. So here's our application checklist, which I'm going to run through for you. The first thing you need is the completed application form. This is, what you think of as like a school application form. Okay? If you apply before January 15th, you do not have to pay an application fee, but if you apply after January 15th, you will need to pay an application fee. We do require a 500-word statement of purpose. For the advocacy and policy concentration, we recommend you talk about, your interest in policy work with education in the US. For learning and teaching, we recommend you talk about your teaching philosophy, like what kind of teacher you want to be. But basically, the statement of purpose is, why do you want to do this program specifically? We have a writing exercise response, which is also 500 words, where you are presented with I think it's about 3 pages report on K-12 education in the US from the Aspen Institute, and we ask you to respond to that report. There is a writing prompt. It's not just a general response, but that's also about 500 words. We ask for the most recent copy of your resume or CV. We require 3 letters of recommendation. Typically, we want 2 of those letters to be from an academic source, so a former professor of yours, and 1 to be from a professional source, so maybe your supervisor at your current job. We appreciate, though, that some of our applicants have been out of undergraduate, or if they've already done some grad school out of grad school for a while, they might not have access to 2 academic sources. We require at least 1, because you are going to be a student with us, so we want to know what you were like as a student. We need copies of your unofficial transcripts from your undergraduate degree and any graduate degrees you might already have. If your degree is from a school where the language of instruction was not English, we will need proof of English proficiency. So that can either be the TOEFL exam or the IELTS exam. We do not require the GRE for the advocacy and policy concentration. For the learning and teaching concentration, you will need one of 3 things. You will either need to show us that your undergraduate GPA, specifically your undergraduate GPA, was over the equivalent of a 3.0. If you had under the equivalent of a 3.0, you will need to either take the GRE or the Praxis Core exam. The Praxis Core exam is very similar to the GRE in that it has a reading section, a writing section, and a math section. Sorry, I couldn't remember the third one for a second. So you will either, just to recap, either over 3.0 in undergrad, GRE, or Praxis Core. If you're not sure what you need, get in touch with me. As we've mentioned a few times, our program actually starts in July. So for our summer 2025 start, our priority deadline to be considered for our largest number of scholarships is December 15th. If you apply by January 15th, whether it's for the December 15th deadline or between December 15th and January 15th, you don't have to pay an application fee. We also recommend the January 15th deadline if you're an international student, just because the visa process can take a while, and our program starts earlier than most graduate programs do. Our final deadline to start in summer of 2025 is April 1st. As I mentioned, since December 15th is our priority scholarship deadline, if you submit by that deadline, it increases your chances of receiving our largest merit aid package. Speaking of merit aid packages, how are you going to fund this program? So all of our applicants are considered for program funded merit aid. So that's a merit aid tuition scholarship. And that funding is limited. So that's why we recommend applying earlier. It increases your chances of getting a larger package. If you are in the learning and teaching concentration, you will also be considered for additional funding through something we call Project Elect, which is actually a grant we have through the U.S. Department of Education to train more multilingual teachers for multilingual students. So that's an additional funding source that's available to learning and teaching applicants. And as both Professor Sinclair and Professor Deng mentioned, your residency experience, so the work that you're doing throughout the year, is paid. There are a few advocacy and policy positions that are not paid, but we always confirm with the student that that's something they're comfortable with. But for the advocacy and policy positions, they are all paid. For learning and teaching, you'll be working as an employee of either DCPS or a charter school, and you will be compensated accordingly and receive health insurance and other benefits through your school. Okay, now's the fun part for you. What questions you have. I invite you to either put questions in the chat or come off mute to ask your question. And if you do ask a question, I'd like you to state your name and what concentration you are planning to apply to. If you're not sure what concentration is right for you, you can say that, and we can follow up to think about which concentration makes the most sense for you to apply to.
Hi, my name is Grace, and I am looking into the policy and advocacy concentration. And I have a few questions, but I'll start. Do you have program support as far as like job development, like job placement?
Hi, Grace. Thanks for your question. So yes, the residency class offers, I have a number of ways that I support that. So we have a wonderful graduate career services office here at Georgetown. And so we have a great partnership with them. They'll do 4 sessions over the course of the year, everything from leveraging your residency placement for your own professional development growth, thinking about building your digital presence, and then some sessions in the spring specifically on the job search process and on, everyone's least favorite topic, networking. And then also we have a really robust alumni network. And so I have 2 separate alumni panels in the spring. And the purpose of those is really to kind of see like the wide range of job opportunities available out there for folks who do this program, and also again kind of build that connection and get some with other folks out in the field and get some advice about the job search process. And those are always really helpful for students. And I'll say the career services office also offers one-on-one career coaching, so you can make as many appointments as you need to meet with them to help support in the job search process.
I will also add that even beyond our amazing alumni network for this program, Georgetown has an extensive alumni network, including hundreds of people who work in the field of education. So if you're looking for that kind of strong network, this is a great program for that.
Thank you so much. That's
Mhm.
awesome to hear. Another question is just if you could talk a little bit about the schedule for the full-time and kind of the balance of the residency and the coursework.
Sure. So I can talk a little bit about the structure of what your day looks like around your semesters. And then Professor Sinclair, if I can lean on you to talk a little bit more about the actual student experience. So in that first summer, we mentioned you're taking 2 classes. Those classes are at night. You're preparing to starting at 5 p.m. So at that point, you're preparing to start your residency placement. You're getting used to graduate school coursework. Right? In the fall semester, and those courses meet, even though they're 2 courses, they meet 4 nights a week because it's a condensed time frame. In the fall and the spring, you're working at your residency placement during the day. What that schedule looks like depends on your residency placement. You might be working Monday through Wednesday, 9 to 4. You might be working Monday through Friday, 9 to 1, right? It depends on who you're working with. And then you're in coursework on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, starting at 5. The spring semester is the same. Whatever arrangement you have with your residency experience during the day, that schedule, and then Tuesday through Thursday coursework in the evening. Then in that second summer, for advocacy and policy students, that's usually about when the residency experience ends. So you have more free time during the day, but you're in coursework 4 nights a week for those 2 courses because once again, it's a condensed schedule. Many of our students actually end up starting jobs around then because it's, May, June. So you might start a full-time job during the day, or you might decide you want to wait until you finish the program. That's an option as well.
Yeah, I would just add to that I think although we help sort of make connections between folks in their residency placements, you are an employee for and for L&T too, you are an employee of that organization. So they hire you, you go through their hiring processes, and so you will set working hours along with your residency supervisor, depending on what makes sense for, again, it's 20 to 25 hours, and that can be sort of spread out, whatever it looks like. I will say that placements are a mix of hybrid and in-person options. We don't have any placements currently that are fully remote, but there is a mix as well. So hopefully that helps. And apologize in advance if I have any interruptions. I think my kids just got home from school.
We're all educators here. I think we all know that feeling.
Thank you so much.
Grace, I know you said you had a couple of questions. Was that all of them? I don't want to cut you off.
I think that answered my other questions as well. So
Great.
Thank you.
Andreina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Andreina. I'm from Venezuela, and I'm interested on applying to the Advocacy and Policy program. And I have a question regarding job opportunities for international students. I don't know if you can share a little bit about international student experiences. And I don't know if you know how long is the OPT after graduation. Thank you.
So I can answer the OPT question. We are not a STEM designated program, so your OPT will be 1 year. We do have international students in the program because we have the residency experience as a requirement of our program. It falls under curricular practical training, CPT. So you are able to work with organizations in DC while you're in the program. Professor Sinclair, could you speak a little bit more to the international student experience in A&P?
Yeah, sure. So we have had less international students in A&P. I would say that all of our residency placements are based in local organizations, but I'm happy to speak to you more about that. We've definitely had folks who come through the program internationally and do that work, but I will say we don't currently really have any placements that work with international education. A lot of our coursework is based in US K-12 spaces, but it's certainly something that if it's what you're interested in, this is Molly, we can try to make something happen for you. So I hope that answers your question.
Totally. Thank you very much.
I have a quick question. My name's Claire. I'm also interested in the advocacy and policy concentration. Since the residency and the coursework seem like that requires a lot of focus and attention, certainly, are there opportunities to perhaps work with faculty regarding research interests, or is this, we want to stay focused on the residency and the coursework?
I will say we recommend that you stay focused on your residency and coursework. But I do know that some of our students particularly have worked with Professor Sinclair on her research, especially if it's relevant to their residency placement. Professor Sinclair, I apologize. Can I hand it over to you again to talk about that research?
Yeah, so I think I will also say, yes, like, I mean, some folks have done that. I think it's even just balancing the residency and coursework is quite challenging for folks. I will say that some of the residency placements may have a stronger research component than others. So if research is something that you're really interested in, right, I have one-on-one conversations with everybody, all of the admitted students in the spring. And so that's a chance for you, if research is a priority for you, for example, I can really try to match you up with an organization that has a stronger research component. If you're like really eager for extra work and feel like you have the time, I think there's definitely opportunities to do research. But I would say, I would recommend that folks like be strategic about their residency placement and find something that also is going to give them research experience.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hi, I have a question. Hi, so I'm Abigail. I'm interested in the teaching and learning path. I have two questions. First about the funding part that you mentioned. So I saw there's like the ELECT grant as well as like merit aid. Do you have any more information about like how much of the like sticker like $61,000 price like potentially could be covered by the grant and the scholarships?
Sure. So between the scholarship that's through the grant Project Elect and then the scholarships that we have through our merit aid funding, we can cover up to about 70% of your tuition. So a stipulation of the grant is that whoever gets a scholarship through the grant is you get roughly $20,000. That usually averages out to about a third of your tuition. And then I can't tell you, exactly the size of the merit aid package that you would receive without having reviewed your application, but it could be anywhere up to added on top of the Project Elect to get you up to 70% of your funding.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, I think that you said a little bit about the schedule for the policy program. What does the schedule look like for the teaching and learning program in terms of like course load? Because it sounded like there was 3 actual classes that meet, not just that the residency program was like just doing it. There's like another class. So what does that look like if you're going to also be teaching full time?
Yeah, so our learning and teaching students are teaching full-time, you're right. But it's the same setup as the advocacy and policy concentration. So you're working at your school during the day and then in your coursework in the evening. The residency course that we mentioned, where it's residency 1 in the fall and residency 2 in the spring, is to support your residency placement during the day. So for learning and teaching students, that's working on the key assessments you'll need to get your teaching license. That's working on issues you might be having in your classroom. Professor Den can speak more to the class content of that than I can, but you're correct that it's still the same setup as with advocacy and policy, where you're in your coursework in the evening, but you're working at your school during the day.
So you're meeting 3 times a week generally?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And how many in the past, like, how many teachers do you have that are like full-time, the primary like teacher of record versus like teaching assistant? Just in terms of like balancing those, because that like when I was doing my undergrad, we only had 2 classes a week and full student teaching. So 3 and teaching full-time and being the teacher of record feels like it would be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm just interested in how that's looked in the past.
Sure. Actually, most of our students are not usually the teacher of record because we're a program designed for newer teachers. Most of our students work as educational aides in TC. You can work as a teacher of record if you'd like, with the thought in mind that that's actually a lot more responsibility, right? So we do have, and I know we have several students this year, correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Deng, who are the main teacher, the teacher of record, but most of our students are working as educational aides.
Okay, thank you.
Grace, I'm going to read your question aloud. Grace asked about additional resources for scholarships. So Merit scholarships and then Project Elect for our learning and teaching students are the sources of funding we have through the program, but there are a lot of other resources through Georgetown that you can do, like that are outside scholarships or that are other sources of funding that you can pursue. When I send out the recording of this presentation to everyone afterward, I will also send out links to that.
I just want to add that we, as a program faculty, we are always seeking out more funding opportunities for our student scholarship opportunities. So yes, so some of them maybe we don't know right now, but there are definitely possibility for a grant that could support the tuition. We'll work on that.
We do still have time for more questions, but if you're like me, you're going to think of a question like an hour from now that you realized you forgot to ask. So I'm just going to switch the slide. So long as my computer cooperates. There we go. To my contact information, so that you can grab it. I will also be sending out this recording. So you can grab it later if you need to. So if there are any questions that come up for you later that you want to ask about, please feel free to either email me, call me, or set up a time to meet with me on my Calendly. And, if it's a question that's better answered by a faculty member, then I can forward you to them. All right. If there are no more questions, I will release you all into your Friday. Thank you all for being here, especially if you are in the East Coast time zone, and so it is Friday evening for you. As a reminder, I will be sending out the recording of this presentation afterwards, and if you have any more questions about the application process, the program, anything, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
good night,
much. Happy
everyone.
weekend.
Mhm.
Can I actually ask one more question?
Sure.
Because I kind of have a unique case. So I actually applied last year into